What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today we finally see this Trinidad Chambliss case really come to an end. Mississippi court denies the appeal of the NCAA yet again, making Trinidad Chambliss eligible to play in the 2026 season for Ole Miss. Wow, I am super happy this case is finally ending. I am extremely happy we get to see Trinidad Chambliss another year in college football. I'm really happy this case got over with before the NFL draft. And I want to thank you guys for continuously listening to me with my updates with this case. I feel like we were talking about this case pretty much every single week. Throughout the last 3 months, we probably made 6, 7 episodes really going over this case. It finally comes to an end. I want to talk about everything involved in this case, how this affects the NCAA, how this affects Ole Miss, and most importantly, how this affects Trinidad Chambliss. Now, for the NCAA, I have said to you guys time and time again, I feel like they had a legitimate case against Trinidad Chambliss. When we look at, he was really going for his 6th year of eligibility, and the NCAA was trying to crack down because we see with transfer portal and everything, how many people are staying in college football. It's getting a little unfair for the incoming recruits coming out of high school. Unless you're a complete 5-star recruit, the 3 and 4-star recruits are really getting lost in college football just because of how many people are staying with NIL. They could get more money in NIL than they were able to get in the NFL. So it just makes more people stay in college football. And the high school recruits are being like a dime a dozen now, unless you're a true 5-star. So I feel like, again, with the redshirt freshman year and then the medically redshirt year, this being Trinidad Chambliss' 6th year, I felt like the NCAA did have a legitimate case against him. Now, again, we saw it throughout the COVID years and everything. We've seen people play 7, 8 years in college football. So obviously there have been cases more egregious than Trinidad Chambliss. But I feel like the NCAA, like I said, really is trying to crack down and give the high school incoming recruits more of a chance to play in college football. This does not happen. Obviously, Trinidad Chambliss does win the case. I feel like this is significant for the NCAA because we have seen with NIL, with transfer portal, with eligibility issues, this is getting pushed to court now, and the court is continuously beating out the NCAA. So we see the NCAA have as little power as ever. So I feel like it's huge that they lost another case yet again. For Trinidad Chambliss, I said it. I think it's absolutely massive that this got done before the NFL draft. Because if this would have dragged out throughout the NFL draft and he would have got denied, he would have been taking a year off of college football, which I believe would have been a massive risk. Now, do I think it is a big deal that he decided to go to Ole Miss over the NFL draft? I don't necessarily think this is as big of a deal as a lot of people make it out to be. For Trinidad Chambliss, I think it's probably a little big for his long-term future as a possible NFL quarterback, him staying another year in college football. Because when we look at Trinidad Chambliss, he really only played, 10, 11 games in college football against top competition. Because like we said, his story is phenomenal, but he was playing Division II football for the last 4 years. So I think another year against top competition will only help his development further as a long-term quarterback. But when we look at, again, where it fares out in the NFL draft, I feel like his iron was as hot as ever late in the season. And I really think Trinidad Chambliss would have been the first 3 quarterbacks taken in this year's NFL draft. I don't think that's going to necessarily be the case next year. When we look at next year's quarterback class, it is as strong as ever. When you look at guys like Arch Manning, Julian Sayin, C.J. Card, Dante Moore, Darian Mensah, all these guys going into next year's quarterback class is going to be absolutely loaded. Now, I do think if Trinidad Chambliss does have a really good year and they make the college football playoffs yet again, I do feel like he's going to go within the first 2 rounds, very similar as to last year. But again, next year he's going to have 3, 4 quarterbacks possibly ahead of him, where this year he was already guaranteed a top 3 quarterback. So for his NFL draft stock, I feel like, again, his NFL draft stock, he's taking a little bit of risk playing this season because in a weak quarterback class, he would have been a top 3 quarterback taken. Now he's probably going to be the 5th quarterback. I still think if he has a really good season, he could go within the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft. But I feel like playing this year isn't going to necessarily up or down his draft stock much. And I feel like he's assuming a little bit of risk playing this season. But for his long-term development, I think it's kind of a big deal because I don't know if he would have been ready to play in the NFL as soon as next year after playing only, 10 games against really strong competition. So again, for Trinidad Chambliss, I just think the biggest thing for him within this case that it got over and done with before the NFL draft, because I don't want to see Trinidad Chambliss possibly have to take a year off of college football. I feel like if he would have took a year off of football in general, it wouldn't have his draft stock wouldn't have been able to really survive that if he if this case really played out past the NFL draft and he would have got declined. I feel like Trinidad Chambliss is not the guy that could have taken a year of college football. For Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss is by far the biggest winner of this case. Why I believe Ole Miss is such a winner retaining Trinidad Chambliss is because I feel like Ole Miss is going into a major transitional year. When you look at the first full year without Lane Kiffin, I understand the college football playoff run they had without him, but now you're looking at the first full year. I feel like it is absolutely huge that they get an elite quarterback back on their team in college football, a guy that we know have played in the biggest moments, not only in conference in the SEC had success, but he played on the biggest stages in the college football playoffs. I feel like in a transitional year where Trinidad Chambliss and Ole Miss really could determine how this program is looked at within the next 5-year window, I feel like it's absolutely massive. They get a guy that they know is one of the best quarterbacks in college football back, and they're not really relying on somebody who hasn't played in college football who's a little more of an unknown. Yes, we're talking about Deuce Knight. Deuce Knight, the transfer portal ad from Auburn. I do think Deuce Knight has the talent as a 5-star to be a great starting quarterback in college football. But like I said, in a major transitional year where Pete Golding and this Ole Miss program is really trying to prove that they could do it without Lane Kiffin and still be a top program in the country without Lane Kiffin, I think it's massive that they have a guy that has the experience in college football, not only in the SEC, but on the biggest stages to be a top 5 quarterback in college football and really ride you throughout this major year for them in college football. So like I said, I think it is absolutely massive for Ole Miss over anybody in this case that they were able to retain Trinidad Chambliss. Obviously, Kawan Lacey decided to stay as well. I think Ole Miss is going to be a program that's going to be, again, in the college football playoffs yet again, because I truly believe Trinidad Chambliss as a dual threat quarterback and the way he finished last season, really the way he played throughout the whole entire season, I think he's coming in as a top 5 returning quarterback in college football. Like I said, I think it's massive for Ole Miss their first year without Lane Kiffin to have a quarterback that's not only one of the best quarterbacks in college football, a quarterback that you know what you have the experience in the SEC, the success, and in the biggest moments. Absolutely massive. I think if they were to have to ride with Deuce Knight this year, it would have been a little bit of an unknown. I do believe in Deuce Knight's talent, but I do think it's very beneficial for this program for him to sit a year behind Trinidad Chambliss and to give him the keys the next year. Like I said, this year for Ole Miss is going to be absolutely huge because I think it's really going to shape out the belief of recruits and transfer portal guys in the next 5-year window for them. Again, I think people really want to see a full year under Pete Golding, and I absolutely believe in Pete Golding. I think it was phenomenal what he did in the college football playoff run when a lot of people were counting them out, and I do think he's a really good recruiter from what we've seen this offseason. I do think he's worthy of the job. It's just now, again, in this year, the first year without Lane Kiffin, I think it's massive that Ole Miss has a really big year, and I think they're going to have a big year with Trinidad Chambliss. Hopefully, Trinidad Chambliss is going to be able to retain his stock as well. I do think if they have a good year, he has a good year, he's going to be drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, even in a loaded quarterback class. Again, you're just always assuming a little bit of risk coming back, but he's able to get a lot of money coming back, and he's able to further his development as a future quarterback in the NFL. I do think he kind of needed another year because, again, he only played this handful of games against top-notch competition. Absolutely massive for Ole Miss. Again, Trinidad Chambliss gets what he wanted, another year in college football. And for the NCAA, it seems like they have as little power as ever. That wraps up this little micropod on possibly the final episode on Trinidad Chambliss' case. He's going to play for Ole Miss in 2026, and we get one of the best quarterbacks in college football back returning another year. Exactly what we wanted for our sport, as much elite quarterbacks in the sport as possible to gain the most eyes on the sport. Like I said, drop down your thoughts below on this case, Trinidad Chambliss, and how you think Ole Miss is going to be this season. And Sloppy Saturdays is out.